Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's news, views, trends, and opinions from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this evening I'm joined by Kevin Park, who is running for City Council in Santa Clara. Kevin, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Chris.
And so we definitely want to hear about your campaign and what you're about and why you're doing this. But first of all, tell us a little bit about who you are and let us get to know you.
I'm actually an engineer in Silicon Valley and not a politician. Never really thought about that, but I also teach in my spare time. I'd like to get involved with the community. And I think that politics, running for this office, is another way I can get further involved in my community if, in fact, that's the commitment I've decided to make.
Okay. And so talk to us a little bit about what you teach.
I teach 3D animation and game programming, and I teach a little bit of creativity and content development. I was part of the Santa Clara County Office of Education Arts and Education Initiative several years ago. That's what got me into, I think, more formal teaching. I'd been just helping out different schools, different classes before that, and that got me into it. So software engineer, see the need for artistic creativity, see the need for really strong technical skills, kind of blending those together, and that's what I try to teach.
Well, and that's interesting because a lot of times software engineering type minds are not known to be as creative and have the cool factor associated with them. They can make things work, but oftentimes not necessarily in an aesthetically pleasing kind of way. So you've got the cool factor there.
Kind of. But I think that if you ask enough engineers, are you creative? Are you artistic inclined? They'll all tell you that yes, I am fairly creative. I am artistically inclined. But I think that thinking in a way or feeling creative, artistically inclined, they're two different things, and you can see it in what people do.
Well, and there is, kind of a very linear and milestone-driven mentality and methodology, but true creativity requires being able to break those rules and everything else, and that's where I think a lot of software engineers might have a tendency not to be able to break out as much, and so that's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
So, but even with software engineering and the creative component, the community involvement makes sense, but why politics? It takes a special individual who's willing to kind of lay it out there, put their family out in the public spotlight.
Okay.
What motivates you? What drives you to do that kind of thing?
I think one of the biggest drivers is something that does not prevent me, which is I have no family. So everything I do is kind of just myself.
Okay.
But I also know that there are a lot of engineers that have many political views, but you don't see them involved. I mean, engineers are busy making money. They're trying to provide for their families. They're trying to, they're doing other things. They don't have time for politics. And I think that's largely true of myself as well.
Yeah.
But along with just engineering work or just my work, I do have an interest in, I think, the future. Children, more students. I used to think that children were just children, but I see them now as future coworkers, and I would like to have a hand in what my future is going to be by, I guess, touching the present.
Right. And I think it's interesting to note that a lot of people aren't, not just in the engineering community, but across the board, don't have as much time or energy that they allocate toward politics, just because they are trying to live their life. There's so many things going on that are so hard to keep track of, and fitting all of that into the other components of their life is difficult. So I commend you for taking some time aside and allocating it in this direction.
Yeah.
So as people are trying to figure out, okay, this Kevin guy, what's he about, and why would I consider voting for him in the first place? What are some of the drivers as far as platform-wise, for lack of a better term, that you really feel need to be addressed in Santa Clara that you would try to address if you were elected?
Well, it started out with public service used to be a civic responsibility, and it used to be a civic service. And that's kind of gone away. I think a lot of career politicians have made it into a career as a job. And I want to make very clear that I already have a job. So this is not where I intend to make money. It's not where I intend to make a name for myself. I'd like to make a name for myself in, it sounds cliche, but it's more true the older I get, in the products or the companies I work for and the students that come back, year after year after year. There is a lot of truth to, kind of living vicariously through students.
Right.
Right. But I would like to get public input into politics more. In Santa Clara in particular, we've had a situation where a lot of the city councilors, they know better than the public. They
in their
hear what the public,
estimation.
yeah, they hear what the public has to say, but then they make their own decisions. And I would like to kind of turn that around and say, well, I may not even agree with what people are talking about, but I know that it's important to them. And it's the same thing you do in engineering, which is you have an opinion, but then you kind of support it with other things. And one of the ways that you look for the other side is you try to support the other side for a while and see how far that goes. And then you come down to a couple of conclusions. Politics is a little bit different in that you don't even have to agree, but at some point you should address what people are complaining about. And this is something that does not happen right now. I'd like to say it won't be business as usual. I make a lot of mistakes. I may make a lot of mistakes, but I'd like those mistakes to be our mistakes, the public and my opinion together, not just me trying to push my views onto the rest of the community.
Okay. And so can you give us an example of those types of scenarios where you may or may not necessarily agree, or you see that there's something that's not being addressed currently with that current, we know better than you, so be quiet and take our decisions?
Okay. There are a lot of, I don't know where to start, but I'll start with kind of a big one, which is high density housing.
Okay.
Which is, a lot of people seem to think that people who are against high density housing are against housing, and that's not true. I think that the conversation will go more into how do we preserve things? How do we know when something's too much? But when you have people in city council who already have an opinion of what they'd like to do, a lot of them have real estate interests or land use interests, then it becomes a little bit harder to hear what the people have to say, arguments even for or against. And that's what I'd like to address.
So you're saying you're pro-choice on housing?
Yeah.
Let people decide whether they want high density or more single-family home types of living arrangements?
Yeah, I think it should be planned. I think right now it's kind of mandated. We'd like to do this. People would like to do this, and without hearing what your opinion is, we're going to put it here, and we're going to do this here, we're going to do this here. But if we go a little bit higher level and we say, okay, what makes the most sense? Then we can start planning things, and we're not doing that right now. We're just putting stuff in because it fits.
I can see where the problem is going to occur already. You're trying to introduce making sense into politics.
Okay. Yeah. Because while I'm making sense, they'd rather be making dollars, and
right.
I think that's a very big difference.
Yeah, SE versus CENTS.
Yes.
Okay, great. So talk to us about other things that you see that you feel need to be addressed within Santa Clara County. Or Santa Clara, the city.
The city, yeah. Santa Clara County is not Santa Clara, the city.
Right.
Santa Clara County is very large. Santa Clara City is increasingly very, very, very small. But I think that's one of the things they would like to fix. They would like to get Santa Clara on the map. They feel that they are the heart of Silicon Valley. And yet what I see is we're behind the times. Many other cities have had city staff. We roll through them. We go, every 5 years, 10 years, we bring people in. New people in. And with those new people come new ideas, and the city moves forward, there's progress, there's a little bit of change. I feel that in the last 50 years, we've had maybe 3 different city managers, maybe over 50 years. And what that's done is that it's also brought in a little bit of stagnation. We've been kept in stasis. And now, when the world has changed around us, we haven't really kept up, and so we're trying to do big grabs. And we've got the stadium deal, for example. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think that the rest of the city has to kind of keep up to support the stadium. You just don't have one thing by itself. You've got to kind of augment it with other services. Infrastructure. And infrastructure is hurting right now. And the infrastructure we're putting in is to support, I think, a bigger city than we are currently.
Okay. And talk to us about that, because in many cases around the Bay Area, things that are driving the growth of philosophies like Plan Bay Area, as an example, they're saying we're preparing for this massive growth and we've got to have it, even if the trend is that people are moving away from the area because of regulations, taxes, whatever. It sounds like you feel that Santa Clara is being overgrown for a population that doesn't exist yet. Or am I misunderstanding?
Actually, I don't know. I don't claim to know what the answer is. Do we have too many people? Are we building too quickly, too slowly? But what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a capacity planning, which is in engineering. You never start something without realizing or trying to discern how much are we trying to support. There are a lot of cities that use the phrase built out. They are built out. We don't know what built out means. We don't know how much is enough. Are we full? What does full mean? I think that these kinds of discussions will lead to actual planning. But if you don't have these discussions, you can always build more. You can always pack more in someplace.
Right, right.
I have another view, which is you don't put ice cream in the closet because the closet's where you've got space. You've got to put the ice cream like in the freezer or someplace where it's appropriate, where it makes sense. And what I feel we're doing is we're just putting stuff in different places because we can. We've got room there. We can always tear something down and make something bigger. You can do that, but there's something called appropriateness that we seem to miss.
Can versus should?
Yes. And a lot of people say, well, it's NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well, I think if we look at the entire area and we have a vision for the city, then we can say it's not NIMBY, it's not in my backyard. Maybe it's not in anyone's backyard, right? And certainly not in the backyards of the current city councilors' opinion.
And so what else do you see? Where could there be changes? Where are there things that are going well right now that you would like to continue to push forward?
So I think that the current city council has done a lot to raise awareness for the city. I think that the world has seen Santa Clara as a city for the first time in many, many, many years. I think normally when people say Santa Clara, they do talk about Santa Clara, the county, and not Santa Clara, the city. But with the stadium, we do have Santa Clara, the city, we have a lot more visibility. That one issue, that one item alone puts us on the map. And I think that's a very good thing. I just wish that we can continue to support this, continue to move in a direction that, I guess, brings more awareness to the rest of the city as well, so that they're not left behind or left in the dark while one aspect of the city, gains a lot of attention.
Okay. And so, do you have any concerns? I mean, many times when stadiums and other things come in, it's great at first, and the businesses are excited, and then there sometimes can be a depreciation of the surrounding areas. Do you see that being a problem in Santa Clara, or are there things that you think could prevent that from happening?
So the short answer is there will always be short-term problems. I would like to look at, well, once we get beyond these issues, and we don't get beyond these issues by ignoring them or telling people they don't exist, don't worry about that, it'll get better. I think that we get beyond these issues by addressing them and then making them better. The stadium, hopefully, will be a benefit for the city. If the stadium were not there, maybe we can have discussion as to what the effect of the stadium will be. The stadium is there, so my issue is, how do we make the stadium the best benefit for the city, right? And getting rid of the stadium right now, I don't think that's it.
Right.
But addressing the issues and building an infrastructure so that people who go to the stadium have the best experience possible, while giving the residents, the people who live there, as little intrusion as possible. That is one of the goals that I'd like to have.
Okay. And so, I mean, if there were a top three way to adjust and to make sure that that comes to fruition, any ideas about what those might be at this point, or is it too early in the game?
There are a lot of things that we could address immediately.
Okay.
Some of them are traffic, parking. The parking issue is a little bit, it's a little tough, but I think that you can see how they're closely related. But there are a lot of simple, I say simple, somewhat costly measures that we can put in place, things that we could do that larger cities don't have problems with. For example, on game days, maybe we could have free buses that go from train stop to the stadium, maybe to Central Park or something, and they just run, so people don't have to take their cars. People who don't want to deal with parking don't have to deal with parking in the stadium area. They can deal with parking at their locations, and hopefully they come from a lot more locations than just one place, so they're not filling up the BART stations or the Caltrain stations in one city, but they can leave their cars there, come in, take the shuttle buses that will take them to the stadium, alleviate a lot of traffic, I hope, alleviate some of the parking problems, also address some of the intrusions into the neighborhoods, which is they're not going to the neighborhoods, they're not driving around looking for parking, they're just taking these buses.
Right.
And, how do we subsidize these? Well, there are a lot of businesses perhaps, and maybe we'll take them to the mall or something, and we can get some of the mall stores to subsidize, that would benefit from additional traffic, to subsidize these, and they wouldn't run all the time.
Right. And so, but you were looking at addressing one of the complaints that people have about the new stadium, and that is it's easier to get in by car than public transportation or some other mechanism, which compounds the problem, as you've stated.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that one of the problems, it is at the junction of many different types of public transit, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that they're convenient. And
Right.
I think that we can do a little bit more to make it convenient.
Okay. Any other things that you're thinking need to occur to put Santa Clara on the map? As you said, that's one of the goals. What ideas do you have for doing that or helping to grease those skids?
So I started my interest in Santa Clara with one of the issues in my neighborhood. And then I got put onto the General Plan Steering Committee. We just put together a a phased plan for our vision of the city, which we didn't follow. But at that time, I realized nobody really knows about Santa Clara, and Santa Clara is not really a destination city. And I would like to make Santa Clara a destination city. And what that means is people want to come to Santa Clara. I mean, Cupertino has Apple, but even without Apple, well, maybe that's a bad example. But there are a lot of cities that don't have an Apple or a Google, that people know that's a good place to live. And I would like Santa Clara to be known for that as well, be known for the infrastructure, not just utility bills, but I would like people say, I enjoy living here. They've got a lot of things. Santa Clara has so many different, a lot of things that people know about, but they don't tie them with Santa Clara. Great America, Central Park. We've got lots of things here. And I'd like people to know about that and take pride in it and get a little bit more active. I'd like to see active neighborhoods. And the active neighborhoods alone will get the word out. I would like to see people driving through Santa Clara, and the first thing they notice is the streets are so clean, or the stores are really nice, or hey, this is a pretty interesting place. I'd like to come here more often. But we don't have those right now.
So you're looking at emphasizing more the community-based aspects of Santa Clara versus particularly job growth or high-tech per se, or is it a kind of a balance?
I think those all go hand in hand. In the past, we've been graced with a lot of business. I think that now I would like to see how does business create opportunities for, well, big business, commercial business, create opportunities for smaller businesses, which make it more livable for communities and things like that. I'd like to plan that. I thought that's what the General Plan Steering Committee would be about, but it turned out it was more, what kind of housing can we get away with? And the talks about how we create partnerships with larger companies and smaller companies and communities, that was never put on the table. I was very disappointed with it.
It was more housing and transportation oriented?
Yes, and it was a lot of, well, do you think you should give me a 10% raise or a 20% raise? And the question of, well, we don't want to give you a raise at all, never came into it. It was like, well, everyone told me 10%, so that's what we decided to do. We decided to put all this housing here because in our survey, that was the most common. And it just turns out that was the lowest we can go. So, of course, that's the one that most people picked. So
people didn't have all of the options available to them. They were just choosing what they thought were amongst the available options.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
very true.
So what else should we know about Santa Clara, the direction it should go, and why you're going to get it there?
Okay. So I don't know where Santa Clara should go. I have a lot of ideas where I'd like it to go, and they're not even very specific ideas. I picked Santa Clara because I wanted to live there. Right. I said, this is the kind of house I want because I want to raise a family there. And this is what I'd like my children to have. I'd like them to have a place where they can walk to a lot of different things, a lot of amenities. I'd like to have a yard so that the concept of Kool-Aid houses, a long time ago, we had that. I lived in a neighborhood where we had lots of people, lots of families that would keep track of the entire neighborhood. That was a great feeling. Now we have a lot of neighborhoods where people don't even know who their neighbors are. Right. I would like to get communities back together again. I'd like communities that kind of look out for each other, support each other, and connect with other communities as well. I think I would like to start a little bit smaller. I would like to get larger companies in, but at the same time, I don't want them to think about the companies by themselves and the communities by themselves and the infrastructure by itself. I'd like this to be a kind of an infrastructure, a full discussion. And as an engineer, that's what excites me the most, I think.
Okay. An engineer that's excited about helping people socialize and build community. Yeah. That's an interesting concept.
I'm not a very normal engineer.
Yeah. So how would one go about building that type of a community? Are there things that people can do as individuals?
Yeah.
And how do you plant those seeds in their mind and encourage them?
So the short answer is they kind of have to want to do that. But I think that if you have a kind of neighborhood which invites a lot of people to come in, that are willing, that want to talk to the neighbors, that want to build communities, that's a big thing. If you don't have a lot of people like that, then you're going to put a lot more infrastructure in, you're going to put a lot more outreach in and get people in place, a lot more help. I know other cities in our area, they subsidize a lot of the neighborhood groups. And I think that maybe Santa Clara could do that as well, which is we'd have registered neighborhoods, just like we do with Neighborhood Watch, and then those communities would have, contacts, and they could apply for funding for things like block parties or newsletters, and then we can just connect those all together, and they could each encourage each other to do these things. But if we're just building housing, then you've got a lot of people that just want to buy a house in Santa Clara because it's cheap or it's affordable,
right.
And their link to the community almost ends there.
And just out of curiosity, how does the money appear to subsidize those kinds of programs? Where does it come from?
So the number one thing is, I think that Santa Clara needs to get refreshed with the times, which is developers aren't paying as many fees as much as they could pay, and I think that the developers are also the people that are getting the most benefit from the housing that they're putting in. I would like to see them genuinely want to improve the communities, and they would perhaps put in something in addition to what's legally required of them. Mm-hmm. From engineering, I know one thing: if you like your customer, give them a solution. Right? If you don't like your customer, just follow the contract. Do what they ask. Do what they tell you. And I think that I would like to get relationships where, again, I'm not against developers. I would like to work with developers, and I'd like to see developers work with us. And as we're giving up land and giving up fees, see what they can give up as well to support the communities.
Okay, so we just have about a couple minutes left. Give us the pitch. I mean, why should people, what 2 or 3 things, I mean, you've talked about several issues, what 2 or 3 things do you want to just stick in people's minds as to why they should think about Kevin Park for
because it would be open government. The first thing is I want transparency. I'd like to, we probably can't eliminate things like closed room meetings, but I'd like to bring the people in. I'd like the people to know what we're doing, and more importantly, I'd like them to give us some feedback on what we're doing. I
Real
think
feedback.
That's what keeps engineering systems alive, which is feedback. And negative feedback is always a good thing. We get this oscillation where you do something, people complain, so you go down a bit, and then people complain, you go up a bit, but then you find a true path. And I think that that's the kind of feedback I'd like. We don't get as much feedback as I would prefer these days, because a lot of people have given up, and that's the number one thing I want to change. I want to change the people who have given up. I want them to give us another chance and actually listen to them, and then long term, see them back again. Okay. They're not necessarily going to be happy, but at least they're going to feel better about complaining to us. We're actually listening to them.
Okay. So transparency, community, any other quick item that people should be thinking?
Infrastructure, which is long term. Stadium is a good thing, but stadium's one thing. And in order to support that stadium, I would like to have roads that are good, roads that people don't have to, that aren't as broken as they are, sewer lines, water, recycled water. I'd like to be known for a good infrastructure. Right now, I feel that we're not known for that. Whenever I go to a meeting, I can always hear one person complain about the infrastructure. And then we hear a lot of items where we're spending $1.16 million, for example, to landscape an overpass. And I think that $1 million to landscape an overpass during a drought year where you're going to put in palm trees, maybe I could spend $50,000, $20,000. If you made an Eagle Scout project, I'm sure Eagle Scouts could come up with a better way to do this much more cheaply. But I'd like to put that kind of money into fixing the roads, fixing the sewers, fixing, lots of things, lighting.
Well, we're about out of time for now, but give us your website quickly so that we can direct people who want to find out more.
You can find out more about me. In fact, I should read it myself and find out about myself. KevinPark.org. That's KevinPark.org.
Okay, great, Kevin. Well, thank you for joining us. If you hold on for just a moment, we'll be back after a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum.
The Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley began with 20 conservatives meeting at a restaurant in November of 2003. Our mission is to promote the principles of American liberty through education. By 2012, we had grown to over 600 paid members. Our monthly meetings feature well-known and prestigious conservative speakers addressing issues that are critical to our country's very survival. This includes speakers like Victor Davis Hanson, Andrew Breitbart, David Horowitz, and many others. In addition to our monthly meetings, we sponsor a conservative local cable access TV show, The Right Side, covering today's topics. Our Constitution discussion group not only teaches the Constitution, but started our annual essay contest that awards 2 $1,000 scholarships to local high school seniors. We are a virtual clearinghouse for grassroots organizations by providing them with table space at no charge in our exhibit area. There are typically a dozen groups represented. If you are like-minded, join us at our next meeting and become motivated and empowered. Liberty, made in America.
And welcome back to The Right Side. That was a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum. And while we appreciate them immensely for the support they give us and making this show a possibility for us over nearly 3 years, they're best known for their speaker series. And for example, this month in September, Mark Mix of National Right to Work is speaking at the forum. Next month, Pam Geller, who's a blogger and a commentator on radical Islam, will be speaking. On November 11th, James O'Keefe, founder of Project Veritas, will be our speaker. And in December, Adam Gillette, Director of Development and Outreach for the Motion Picture Institute. We've got other speakers coming up, the packed schedule, but all the way into May of next year on the 12th. Alan West, former U.S. House of Representatives representative, will be speaking, and that's going to be one that will probably be packed to the rafters, so get there early. You can learn more at theconservativeforum.com, such as ideas about the doors opening at 6:15, the program starting at 7, and the address at 432 Stearland Road here in Mountain View, about 3 minutes from the set we're on currently. In closing, it's a little late this cycle to get on and run for City Council yourself, but definitely the decisions that are happening at the City Council level right now have regional ramifications. Check out Kevin, understand what he's up to, or if there's someone that's in your area, research them all and get behind them. Since you can't run yourself at this point, it's too late to disclose your intention to file. Get behind a candidate and support them either walking or in other ways, because you need to be heard and you need to understand what's happening within your city council. On that note, we thank you again for joining us on The Right Side. I've been your host, Chris Pareja, and I look forward to seeing you sometime soon, either in person or on the show. And if you just can't wait till then, reach out to us at therightsidetv@gmail.com, and we'd be glad to get back in touch with you. Have a great night.